What happens when Stephen King watches the news? Stay tuned to find out. Mr. Mercedes was written by none other than Stephen King and narrated by Will Patton. So for those of you less patient out there, do I recommend? Don't I recommend? I recommend. This is it's a good book. It's worth checking out. It won't blow your mind by any way. It's not Stephen King's best work, but it's definitely worth checking out. With that said, let's start with the story. Mr. Mercedes is the first of a trilogy surrounding a detective named Bill Hodges. He's about to retire, and his last scene on the force, if you will, was a tragic accident when someone took a Mercedes and ran over several individuals that were looking for work at a unemployment type office. The case was never solved, but while he was still on the job, he did narrow his sights down on one individual, which was an elderly lady by the name of Elizabeth Wharton. Elizabeth, it was her car that was used in this horrific act, and Bill and his partner Pete Hunley, they grilled her. They asked where her extra spare key was. She said she would never got one. No spoilers here, but it did not end well for no one. And then Bill Hodges retired. And it was around this time, and Bill began to receive letters from the killer talking about how he enjoyed doing what he did and how no one will ever catch him because he has no urge to do it ever again. And why don't Bill, you old retired detective, just take that revolver and blow your brains out? The villain in this place, and this is no spoiler, you find this out right away, because unlike most mystery novels, Stephen King goes the route of explaining exactly who your antagonist is from the onset. So the antagonist is this Brady Hartsfield, and he's a young tech-savvy individual and was really trying to drive Bill Hodges to kill himself. But was he ready for the consequences? I think not. Bill Hodges not only did not kill himself, but he took out a private investigator's license and he started tracking this son of a gun down. So this story, where it's basically a cat and mouse, and one thing that is in this book, there's no supernatural element to it. You got a cop and you got a villain, and the cop's on the trail of the villain, and the villain is trying to outsmart the cop, and that's really just it. It does culminate in a very satisfying ending, and you get to meet a lot of wonderful characters. Again, Stephen King, top notch in his characterization, even to the villain itself. You really hate this guy, as you should any villain. A lot of the characters in this were wonderful. Again, I'm going to name a couple of them. We had Jerome Robinson, which he was probably my favorite character. We had a love interest for Bill Hodges, whose name was Janie Patterson. And then another one of my favorite characters was Holly Gibney. The story was top notch, but it wasn't as good as classic Stephen King. But it was better than some of his current stuff. But this is a good read. That's why I would give the story a 4 out of 5. Now let's talk about narration. Will Patton did a very good job with bringing in that suspense and that thrill that was involved with this book. He wasn't the best narrator I ever listened to, but he was definitely not the worst. I mean, he was good. He did bring this world alive. He made the action very dramatic. I did at times get certain characters confused. Just his he couldn't extend or differentiate between too many characters, and for that reason, I would give narration a 4 out of 5. Now let's go to listenability. So listenability is probably the weakest point on this book. I did like it. I did enjoy it. But there was nothing here that made me want to come back and listen to it once you get through the story. It's your basic detective novel, mystery novel, and even a little bit less so in the sense that you know exactly who did it from the beginning. There is some good elements to knowing who did it in the beginning, because you can kind of explore that character as well. But a lot of the mystery is taken away by doing that. So no supernatural elements in this book, which, you know, Stephen King, I was actually very surprised. I was waiting for It the Clown to jump out somewhere, or him to transform into It the Clown or something of that nature. But no, straightforward police detective, find the bad guy story. For this reason alone, I would give listenability a 2 out of 5. So that would give us an overall score of 3.3 or 3.3, 3.333 if you want to be exact. It's an average story. I definitely do recommend it. It's worth listening to. The trilogy is just as good. I'll be doing on some follow-up videos later. What was your favorite Stephen King book? Comment below. My favorite Stephen King book of all times has been, and more likely always will be, Salem's Lot. That is just a classic. I'm looking forward to doing a review on that after I finish the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. It's a great book, and we'll talk about it later. That has been Drotalks. Thank you for listening. Hit that like and subscribe. Ring that bell to get notified, and we'll see you next time.